Hello, welcome to the Team SNG tutorial video. Today we're going to have another Yu-Gi-Oh! 101 with my dad. Today we will be talking about spells and traps. Now we talked about them briefly in the last section, link is down below in the description, where we just talked about them as an overall card type, but we didn't really go into the nitty-gritty and the details of different varieties that there are, such as ritual and field. So this video covers those sort of details. And while I got your attention, I want to ask you guys, leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe. And as I say, make sure you subscribe to see more videos where we cover the basics of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, as I say, we are talking about different kinds of spells. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a normal spell. Normal spell will just say spell card. Normal spell can be played either face up or face down in the spell and trap card zone. So you can play it revealing its effect, which is how you would activate it from the hand, or you would play it face down. You can't use them as a reactionary thing. So if it's your turn and your opponent activates a trap card, you can't just activate the spell from hand in response to that trap card's effect. You have to that trap card is going to go off, then you can continue playing your spells. Do you understand?
No.
Okay. So, let's say my opponent had Super Team Buddy Force on their field, right? They had it face down. And I start my turn and I have this in my hand.
Right.
I can activate this from the hand.
Oh, I see.
I can just activate it.
Oh, right. Okay.
But if my opponent activates Super Team Buddy Force, I can't activate this until Super Team Buddy Force has finished its effect. Now there are certain kind of spells which will allow you to do that. But in the case of a normal spell, you have to wait until the chain has resolved, until the trap card has gone off. Okay? So that's a normal spell. And as I say, you activate it. Once it's finished its effect, it will go to the graveyard. And then once you finish this effect, it'll go to the graveyard. And then you keep going with your turn.
Right. Okay. But then it won't work from the graveyard.
No. Now, some spells will have effects that sort of say, oh, if this card's in the graveyard, banish this card off, or shuffle this card back to do X, Y, or Z. But most spells, no, they don't actually do anything when they're in the grave.
Okay.
The next card is a field spell. The reason you know this is a field spell is this little symbol here, next to
right.
spell card.
Okay.
It is a compass.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a field spell. Field spells are played in the field zone, which is just above the extra monster deck zone.
Okay.
Okay? So what this is Ojama Country, and it's a field spell that says you can send an Ojama card from your hand to the graveyard to summon an Ojama monster from your graveyard. If you control an Ojama monster, the attack and defense of all monsters on the field is flipped. So their attack becomes their defense, and their defense becomes their attack. Okay? But it's a field spell, and basically all you need to know is that it doesn't get played in one of the 5 zones, it gets played in the field zone. Now you're never going to have field traps, you only have field spells. So you can play it face down if you want, but it won't do anything if it's face down, it has to be face up. So, alright?
So why would you have it up?
Why would you play it face down?
Face down, yeah.
You can only control one field spell at a time. So if you have a field spell in the zone, and you want to get rid of it, or you don't need it anymore, or you're worried its effect will help your opponent, you can play a field spell face down to get rid of this one. So what you do is, if the field spell is in the field zone, you can take another field spell, and you can play it face down, and then the field spell that was there will just go to the grave.
Okay. What's the sense of that?
Well, say you have an effect that benefits both you and your opponent. It's a benefit effect,
right.
And you don't want your opponent to have that benefit on their turn.
Yeah.
You can then play a field spell face down,
right,
to remove the field spell that is active in the field zone.
Okay.
Okay?
Even though they're not the same.
They don't have to be the same field spell. They can be different ones.
Oh, I see.
Or they.
So anything that's face up.
Yeah. Is active.
Is active, and your opponent can actually utilize those.
If it's in the
their
field
own
zone.
Effect.
If it's in the field zone.
Oh, only in the field
If
zone.
it's in the spell and trap card zone,
Yeah.
more often than not, it's just going to have an effect that benefits you.
Oh, right.
But
okay.
field spells,
okay.
as I said earlier,
Yeah,
are a bit different because they affect the whole field.
Yeah.
Whereas spell and trap cards often just benefit you.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
So we talked about a ritual monster earlier, so I'll pull him back out so we can see him. We talked about a ritual monster earlier. This is his ritual spell.
Okay.
Now, the reason
What,
brings him out.
Right.
This is what brings him out.
Right.
Now, the ritual spell is indicated by the little flame next to spell card.
Okay. Yeah.
You see how it's a little
Yeah.
fire. Summoning conditions for Revendred Slayer are that you activate this card in your hand, and it is used to ritual summon any Vendred monster from your hand or from your graveyard. So this is because he's a zombie archetype, his ritual spell will bring him back from the grave. Not all ritual spells will do that. Some ritual spells will only be from the hand.
Okay.
Okay?
So if you've got this card in your hand,
Yep.
your opponent might not know you've got it.
Well, obviously, because you're not going to show your hand to your opponent.
No.
You sort of keep that to yourself.
So if you say, I want to bring back
Revendred Slayer. Yeah.
How does he know? Do you have to show him the card?
Yes.
That you've got?
So to make any to have any spell card have its effect occur, you have to say I activate this card and play it in one of the 5 zones.
Oh, I see. Okay. What happens if you haven't got any spaces left?
Then you can't play spells or traps. If you've got things in the zones, and they are going to stay there, you cannot activate a spell or trap until you make space.
So you're a little bit.
Hamstrung.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Now, if you play a trap heavy deck that runs a lot of traps, it's a little more difficult because they have to be face down for an entire turn before you can get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
But with spells, you often will just activate the spell, its effect will go off, and it'll go to grave, and it won't stay there.
Oh, I see. It clears the space.
It clears the space. It doesn't actually stay in the space.
Okay.
Unless it's a certain kind of spell called a continuous spell, which we'll get to in a second.
Right.
Or a field spell. A field spell will stay there until it's removed.
Until it gets taken off.
Right. But most spells will just activate, go to grave.
Okay. There's
Same with
a
one-time use.
trick posted.
They're a one-time use. Yeah, and they're a one-trick
Yeah.
pony because they only do what's
Yeah.
written on them, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, they're a one-time use. So, Revendred Origin is the ritual spell for Vendred monsters.
Right.
Revendred Slayer is a Vendred monster.
Yeah, sure.
So, in this case, you need to tribute monsters from your hand or field, or banish zombies from your graveyard, whose total level equals or exceeds his level. And a lot of ritual spells will have this, where you need to send monsters whose level equals the level of the monster you're trying to bring out. This one lets you send them from your hand, or your field, or your graveyard. Some will just let you send them from your hand, some will just let you send them from the field, some will just let you send them from the deck. There is one archetype, there's one group of cards, which will let you send them from the extra deck.
Right.
But for simplicity's sake, the ritual spell will tell you where you can send your stuff from, but you will always need to equal or exceed the level of the monster.
The monster itself.
That you're trying to bring out.
Okay.
And so it's like the cost of a ritual. That's sort of how maybe that would help you remember that, is that it's the cost for a ritual. So it's your goat sacrifice.
Right.
Okay? So, we talked earlier about how you can't react with a spell card to your opponent's card activation. So to their trap card, or to maybe a monster effect, or whatever. You can't just... Your opponent has an effect that goes off. On your turn, you can't just play the spell. You have to wait. This is called a quick play spell. And you can tell that by the little lightning bolt next to the spell card. And that means that you can react to your opponent's cards. If you play this face down, you can use it on your opponent's turn. If you play it face up, its effect goes off. And if it is in your hand and your opponent activates something, you can play this from the hand in response to that activation.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay? We'll talk about how chains work, because chains sort of like several effects going off together. They work in a certain way, and we'll talk about how that all would play out once we've got this bit sorted. Because we're doing the basics first, obviously. So this is a quick play spell, which means you can activate it from your hand as a response, but you can set it face down and use it like a trap on your opponent's turn, so on. Alright? Okay. The final spell we're going to talk about is continuous spells. So you talked about how spells... we talked about how spells clear the space. Continuous spell will not clear the space. And you know it's a continuous spell because of the infinity symbol.
Right.
Next to its the name spell or the word spell card. This will sit here and often will have an effect that is continuous. That is basically a field similar to a field zone.
Right.
But more often than not, it will have an effect that just affects your opponent because it's a field effect. Or like a negative effect that affects your opponent, or a positive effect that affects you and not your opponent. So in the case of this, trap cards that activate in the same column as a Mech Knight, or your opponent's trap cards that activate in the same column as a Mech Knight, will not activate. Their effects won't go off. So that's what this does. It benefits you, it doesn't benefit your opponent. Unlike a field spell, which will benefit you and benefit your opponent. So that's why these can be really useful, because it means that you have an effect that is just continuously there. So we're going to open the kimono a bit here. We're going to show you the truth. At the end of the day, somehow me and my dad, we forgot to do equip spells. So we're just going to talk about equip spell real quick. This here is an equip spell. This is United We Stand, and with COVID and all the pandemic, the way you define an equip spell is by this little symbol right here, which is a cross symbol or an addition symbol. And the way you can think of them is equipment that you would put on your monsters. So typically equip spells will equip to a monster on the field. Some will equip to monsters in the grave, bringing them back typically. Something along the lines of premature burial. However, most equip spells will just equip to monsters on the field, and they will grant a bonus. So in the case of United We Stand, it grants the equipped monster 800 attack and defense for each face-up monster that you control. Most equipped spells will grant combat advantage, some will grant protections, but typically they are a spell card. You activate them from your hand like any other spell. You select the monster that you're equipping this to, and then this card will become equipped to that monster, and so long as this card remains on the field and that monster remains on the field, the effect of this card is granted to that monster. Once the monster leaves the field, this card will leave the field and go to the grave as well. However, if the equip spell leaves the field, unless stated otherwise, the monster will remain on the field. So the equip spell is tied to the monster, but the monster isn't tied to the equip spell. Spells can only be used on your turn. You can't activate a spell on your opponent's turn.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. Unless it is a quick play spell,
yeah, I was gonna
and
say.
You've played that face down.
Oh, it has to be face down?
Yeah, it can't be in your hand to activate on your opponent's turn.
Alright, okay.
It can be in your hand to react in your turn, but not in your opponent's.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Oh, okay.
Do you think you got that?
So it's got to be on the table.
Face down. Yeah, it has to be on the table face down before its effect can go off. So, we're now going to talk about traps. Traps have to be played face down, and they have to stay face down through a turn, and then on your opponent's turn they can be activated. If you don't activate them on your opponent's turn, you can activate them at any time
after
on your turn or their turn. It doesn't really matter. So trap cards are really useful because...
Why would you have face down?
Because your opponent doesn't know what it is. If I have four cards back... If I have four cards face down, my opponent doesn't know what they are. My opponent might think, oh, if I summon a monster, he could flip one of those and it'll destroy the monster. So now your opponent might think, I need to get rid of all four of those before I can do the rest of what I want to do.
Right.
Because they don't know what these do.
Yeah,
these could do anything. These could make the table flip over for all they know. They don't know.
Yeah.
So you play them face down. That's why there are certain decks that revolve around trap cards. This is a generic trap card. It's a basic trap card, and you can tell that it's basic because think about the spell cards. How do we tell the different kinds of spell cards from each other?
There's a little logo at the side of them.
What about a normal spell card?
I can't remember.
Well, go ahead. You can take a look. You've got your little cheat paw. So a normal spell card
Oh, that doesn't have a logo either.
Right. And that's because that's a normal spell card.
All right. Okay.
So normal spell cards and normal trap cards don't have any logo associated with them.
Okay.
They will just say trap card.
Right.
As I say, they work like a spell. A normal trap card works like a normal spell card. It will activate and then it will clear the space and it will go to the grave.
Yeah. Okay.
That's really all that does.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay? The next one. Go on, take a guess.
Infinity one.
So it's a...
Is that the one?
Same one. We're looking at the same card.
Yeah.
It's a continuous spell because of the infinity symbol. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So this again, you'd play it face down. Then on your opponent's turn, you would activate it, but it will stay on the field and its effect will continue to be a presence until it is removed.
Yeah.
Now there are going to be cards that can sort of say something like destroy 2 spells or destroy a spell or trap. And that will let them get rid of it. But for the most part, it will stay on the field until you remove it. Unlike a field spell, you can't get rid of it by setting something face down on top of it. That doesn't work. It is just going to be there until it's removed by card effect.
All right.
Okay? All right. So that's that. Now this is the final kind of trap card and the final kind of card that's in the main deck. And this is called a counter trap. And you can tell it's a counter trap because of its little reversey arrow next to trap card. Yeah, it's
not very clear.
It isn't the clearest.
I see. Yeah, I see.
It isn't the clearest thing. It's like a little arrow.
It's like a return key.
It's like a return key.
Like a return key.
Yeah. So it's a counter trap. The difference to counter traps to any other trap is the only thing your opponent can use to activate against it is another counter trap.
Right.
So if my opponent activates Metaphys Ascension, and I have Cynet Conflict face down, I can activate Cynet Conflict. My opponent can't then chain or activate World Legacy Secrets in response to this because it's a counter trap.
Right.
Counter traps are going to be, they basically end the back and forth of card effects. Whereas trap cards, if I was to activate this and then activate this, I can still activate a counter trap because a counter trap is considered faster than the other cards.
Right.
So counter trap is considered the fastest kind of card, and because it's the fastest kind of card, it will end a chain. Nothing can react to it except for another counter trap.
Okay.
All right? That's really it. That's pretty much it. That's all that goes into a main deck.
Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about the main deck, and we've talked about the field. I think we'll leave it there for today, guys. I hope this video has helped and has at least taught you the basics of the different kinds of spell traps that are available to you when you play the game. All of these would be put into your main deck, and at this point, I'd just like to thank you guys for watching. Make sure you leave us a like, leave us a comment, and leave us a subscribe. And if you are interested in seeing more of this, make sure you definitely leave that subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified, because we will be having more videos along this vein explaining the basics of the game to all people coming into it. And that being said, I'll see you guys at the next video.